Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. As Hugh Jackman's character says in The Greatest Showman, it starts tonight, it starts tonight. At 6:30 p.m., Game 1 of the second-round series between the Brooklyn Nets and Milwaukee Bucks tips off at Barclays Arena. This has been one of the most anticipated series by NBA fans worldwide this year, and it has finally arrived. I already have 4 videos and 35 minutes of content previewing this series on my channel, but I still have so much more that I want to touch on prior to opening tip. This video will function as my catch-all preview for this battle of heavyweight contenders to win the NBA Finals this year. Let's start by talking about what it looks like when the Nets are on offense and the Bucks are on defense. The first key on this end is the way Milwaukee tries to match up with Brooklyn's Big Three. I already made a video outlining this, and in that video I concluded that Milwaukee will likely put Yanisan, Tsarakumpo on Kevin Durant, Chris Middleton on James Harden, and Jrue Holiday on Kyrie Irving. If that is the case, I think Jrue can really limit what Kyrie is able to do as the scorer. He did a great job on Irving when these teams matched up in the regular season, and I think he could continue to contain Irving by using his length and strength to prevent Kyrie from getting to the basket as frequently as he did during the regular season. That could lead to Kyrie scoring roughly 20 points per game on average shooting efficiency, which is a significant decrease from Kyrie's regular season average of 27 points per game on 50-40-90 shooting. If Jrue is able to guard Kyrie as well as I think he can, it will significantly boost the Bucks' chances of winning this series. The other two Brooklyn stars will be a bit more troubling for Milwaukee to defend. When Middleton is guarding Harden, I think he'll be somewhat able to limit Harden's shooting ability, but that hasn't really been James's focus this season. After leading the league in points per game the last 3 seasons, Harden took a step back in the scoring department in his first year with Brooklyn and instead led the league in assists per game. That passing ability could be what really hurts the Bucks in this series because I don't necessarily think Chris will be able to stop James from getting into the lane. This won't be an issue for surrendering points to Harden, as one of the Bucks' big men will likely be there to swallow up his shots at the rim. However, Harden's ability to get into the lane will open plenty of passing lanes for an incredibly gifted passer. That could spell disaster for Milwaukee. The speed with which off-the-ball help defenders like Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker, and Brook Lopez can help, and more importantly, recover, will play a huge role in how effective the Bucks' defensive scheme will be defending Brooklyn in this series. While I'm talking about Connaughton, I do also want to mention that I think he can be an effective option defending Joe Harris for the Bucks. Connaughton plays very hard and is quite active in the way he plays defense. He makes a lot of the same key hustle plays Donte DiVincenzo did prior to his unfortunate injury, and that hustle play will give the Bucks an advantage against a Brooklyn team that doesn't always necessarily play the hardest when chasing after loose balls. Pat is also one of the best defenders in the entire NBA when it comes to rear view contests. That means he does a great job of making shots difficult for his opponent even when he's put behind that guy he's guarding. If Brooklyn tries to use Harris as a pick-and-roll ball handler at any point in this series, Pack should be able to take away some seemingly open jump shots from Joe and instead make them incredibly difficult for Harris to make. This particular skill could also make Connaughton a viable option to spend some time on either Irving or Harden, although he doesn't have the height to defend Kevin Durant, so the Bucks will have to find another player to take on that matchup. That takes us to probably the single most important matchup for the Bucks on the defensive end of the court, Yanisan Tsarakumpo on Kevin Durant. This wasn't a matchup we saw much in the regular season, but on one late-game possession where Giannis had switched onto Durant, the Greek Freak showed how effective he can be defending that matchup as he blocked KD's attempt at a mid-range jumper. However, this was just one play. There were also plenty of other instances where Durant was able to get his jump shot off over Giannis, and he knocked that down on a few different occasions. I think he could particularly expose Giannis's defensive deficiencies if Brooklyn continually runs him off of pin-down screening actions. Giannis has struggled to get over screens in the past, and Durant's ability to get his shot off quickly using his high and fast release after the catch could allow Durant to really punish Giannis's inability to get over screens. If Antetokounmpo does manage to get around those screens, his length and athleticism will likely allow him to get a great contest off on Durant's jumpers. So the success that KD has scoring in this series may be the determining factor of who ends up winning. In 3 regular season matchups with the Bucks this year, Durant averaged 34.7 points at 48.7% shooting. If he does that in this series, I doubt Milwaukee will be able to win because those are astronomically high scoring numbers from a very talented player in Durant. However, if Giannis is able to hold him closer to a season average of 27 points per game, it will incrementally increase the Bucks' odds at winning this series. Other than the 4 Nets I just touched on, Durant, Harden, Irving, and Harris, no one on Brooklyn is particularly threatening as a scorer. Blake Griffin is a really good passer and can make open catch and shoot threes, but he's past the point in his career where he can create offense for himself. Bruce Brown and Nick Claxton don't do much other than finish at the rim and set screens, so they're far from threatening as offensive weapons. Landry Shamet is a knockdown shooter, but he lacks oomph off the dribble, so it's unclear how much scoring he'll actually be able to do against Milwaukee. With that being said, let's switch over to the other end of the court and discuss what happens when the Bucks are on offense and the Nets are on defense. The first talking point on this end is how Brooklyn will attempt to defend Yanisan Tsarakumpo. Remember the crazy numbers Durant put up against Milwaukee this year that I just outlined a couple minutes ago? Giannis's numbers against Brooklyn were even better than what Durant did against Milwaukee. Giannis averaged 39.7 points per game on 49% shooting against the Nets in their 3 regular season matchups. That's because the Nets' strategy for defending the Greek Freak was essentially just to not defend him. DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin drew the Greek Freak matchup, and instead of guarding Giannis, they instead sat back in the paint and let Giannis go to work. It goes without saying that Antetokounmpo made them pay. Antetokounmpo drained three-pointers and mid-range jumpers alike as the Brooklyn Nets bigs neglected to contest his jump shots. This way of defending also allowed Giannis to get a running start before his drives to the basket. The Greek Freak was able to build up a head of steam, and that momentum allowed him to finish with power over the Nets' rim protectors. In the postseason, this strategy may to some extent actually work for Brooklyn. If Giannis can't get his jumper to fall, all of the possessions where he settles for pull-ups are going to be wins for the Nets. While that is true, I think Brooklyn is probably going to have to find a different way to defend the 2-time reigning MVP. They simply cannot allow Antetokounmpo to get into the paint and finish at the rim easily. Instead, they will have to wall off the inside, similar to what just failed for the Miami Heat. While the Heat succeeded in stopping Giannis from scoring, he instead just dished the ball off to someone like Brook Lopez or Drew Holiday in the dunker spot, or found a shooter like Bobby Portis or Bryn Forbes on the wing for wide open three-pointers that they easily knocked down. Giannis made the Heat pay as a passer, which is something he certainly could also do against the Nets. There's also a big difference in size and physicality between what the Heat were throwing at Giannis and what the Nets will be able to throw at him in a wall-style defense. Instead of being met at the rim by Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Trevor Ariza, and Andre Iguodala, Giannis's drives will instead be contested by Blake Griffin, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Joe Harris. There's a noticeable difference, and because of that, I still foresee Giannis being able to score if the Nets try to build the wall. This means that if the Nets do employ the wall-style defense, Giannis will be scoring, and so will his supporting cast. That will leave Brooklyn scrambling back to the one-on-one defense, so it is worthwhile discussing who the best potential one-on-one defender on Giannis could be for Brooklyn in this series. The scary thing about that mentality for the Nets is that the most obvious guy to guard Giannis one-on-one, Jeff Green, has missed a significant period of time due to injury, and his status for this series remains unclear. The rest of the Nets have significant flaws as Giannis defenders, so the speed with which Green can come back from that injury will play an important role in this series. The flaws for the other Nets are quite apparent. Blake Griffin isn't quick enough to guard Giannis, Kevin Durant isn't strong or physical enough, Nick Claxton is way too skinny, and Bruce Brown is way too small. DeAndre Jordan might actually be the best option, but he's fallen out of the Nets rotation completely because of his lack of skill offensively. And against the Boston Celtics in Brooklyn's first round series, he didn't play a single minute, so I think it's unlikely that he'll play more than garbage time against Milwaukee. One player I think may actually stand a chance defending Giannis is James Harden. That may come as a surprise to most people because Harden plays a completely different position than Giannis and is much smaller, but hear me out on this one and you may understand why I think this could be a good idea for the Nets. Harden is strong and does an excellent job defending post-ups, which has become a key form of offense for Giannis. Antetokounmpo has developed a lot of his post moves, and he has made defenders pay with his ability to score out of the post. If Harden can do a great job of locking down those post-up possessions from Giannis, it could potentially make Giannis look to go to other forms of scoring offensively. James also can beat him in those other forms as he moves his feet very well and will be able to keep Giannis in front of him. He also is a solid charge taker, so if Antetokounmpo tries to blow through him, that could lead to some offensive fouls and foul trouble for Giannis, which could spell disaster for Milwaukee. The issue with Harden guarding Antetokounmpo is that he's about 6 inches shorter than Giannis, so the Greek Freak will simply be able to shoot over on him. However, if you're Brooklyn, you're going to have to live with Giannis scoring in some way, and I think I'd be willing to deal with Giannis making jumpers more than I would with him dunking every single possession at the rim. Even if Brooklyn does manage to slow Giannis down, which admittedly seems quite unlikely, there are plenty of other options for Milwaukee that are very dangerous to the Nets defense. Chris Middleton may actually have a tough series if Kevin Durant is guarding him, because KD's length will make it difficult for Chris to get shots off, but if the Nets are able to create positive switches that Middleton enjoys, he's going to be able to punish those switches. Chris will use his size to get shots up over smaller Nets defenders, and he's able to use his skill handling the basketball to create space against bigger defenders where he's still able to get off his jump shot. So I think that Chris potentially could have a big series, and if he's able to get hot, especially down the stretch of a game, he could single-handedly win a game or two for Milwaukee. Jrue Holiday is someone who I also foresee having a terrific series. He likely will be guarded by Kyrie Irving to start this series, and Jrue's size, strength, and skill in the lane will allow him to score and distribute very well if he does draw Irving as a one-on-one matchup. Brooklyn can adjust to that by playing Bruce Brown for bigger minutes defending Holiday, but I can't see Brown fully stopping Holiday's dribble drives in the half court in transition, and that look would very much hurt Brooklyn on the offensive end of the court, so I'm not even sure if that is a positive adjustment for Coach Steve Nash to make either. If Brooklyn in addition to being able to create shots for themselves, Holiday and Middleton will also be beneficiaries of the extra help the Nets will have to bring to Giannis Antetokounmpo when he drives to the basket. If Brooklyn leaves either of those two, especially Middleton, open, they'll be in big trouble. Outside of the Bucks' big three, they should also be able to count on significant offensive production inside from Brook Lopez. Lopez should be able to kill Brooklyn on the offensive glass and in post-ups. I made another full video on Lopez's importance in this series, so if you want to hear more on Brook, go check it out, but for this video, I'll leave it at that. Another advantage the Bucks could gain on Brooklyn is if their role players are hitting shots. I'm not expecting much from the quartet of Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker, Bryn Forbes, and Bobby Portis, but if one of them can catch fire and knock down some big shots for Milwaukee, it could potentially swing a game. This season, the Bucks had a defensive rating of 112.1 points allowed per 100 possessions. I don't think they'll quite be able to hold Brooklyn down at that number, as the Nets scored 119.4 points per 100 possessions, but I do think Milwaukee will be able to hold Brooklyn under that season average that I just mentioned. If you split the difference between Brooklyn's offensive rating and Milwaukee's defensive rating, you come away with 115.75 points per 100 possessions. I think that's right around the range Brooklyn will be able to score in during this series. Milwaukee's offensive rating this year was 117.5 points scored per 100 possessions. I have a really hard time seeing Brooklyn slowing down Giannis and stopping the Bucks' supporting cast enough to hold Milwaukee under that number. I predict Milwaukee will outscore Brooklyn by about 1.5 points per 100 possessions and win this series in a very tightly contested 6 games. Let me know what your prediction is for this series in the comment section down below, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all again very soon.